The Echoes of Elmwood Manor, Chapter 1. The Dust and the Whisper. The air in Elmwood Manor was thick with dust and the silence of forgotten things. Clara Vance, 60 and newly widowed, felt the silence like a physical weight. Every creak of the old house in Salem, Massachusetts, seemed to whisper of endings. Her husband, Thomas, gone. Her mother, Eleanor, recently moved to a nursing home, leaving behind a lifetime of accumulated memories in this grand but now desolate house. Clara had come to sort through it all, to bring order to the chaos of the past, hoping perhaps to find some order within herself. The attic was a mausoleum of memories, trunks overflowing with yellowed linens, boxes of forgotten photographs, furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts awaiting their resurrection. Clara coughed, waving a hand through a sunbeam thick with dancing motes. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just anything. Anything to distract from the gnawing emptiness. In a far corner, beneath a forgotten quilt, she found it. A small, sturdy cardboard box. Inside, nestled amongst old knitting patterns and a dried corsage, lay a vintage cassette player, its plastic yellowed with age, and a single, unmarked audio cassette. No label, no date, nothing. Just a blank beige rectangle. A strange, almost magnetic pull drew her to it. Eleanor, her mother, had always been unique, a woman of whims and unexpected pronouncements. Was this one of her little eccentricities? A forgotten audio diary, perhaps? Curiosity, a flicker of warmth in the cold emptiness, nudged Clara to press play. The small speakers crackled to life, a hiss of static, then a voice. Clear, resonant, undeniably Eleanor's, but younger, stronger. "If you're hearing this," the voice began without preamble, "I'm gone, but don't you dare cry. This is for my funeral." Clara froze. The dust motes in the sunbeam seemed to stop dancing. Her breath hitched. Gone? But Eleanor wasn't gone. Not truly. She was in the Whispering Pines nursing home, knitting misshapen scarves and complaining about the lukewarm tea. This tape, this voice, it was from 15 years ago. Clara suddenly remembered a passing comment Eleanor had made years ago about preparing for the inevitable. A morbid joke, Clara had assumed. Now it was chillingly real. The voice continued. Soft but firm, a ripple through the static. And for those of you who might be tempted to shed a tear, remember this. Life is for living, not for mourning. My funeral is a celebration. A grand, glorious, slightly eccentric celebration. Clara's hand trembled as she reached for the stop button, but she couldn't. A strange compulsion held her. This wasn't just a morbid joke. There was something else. Something in the cadence, in the slight catch of Eleanor's breath, that spoke of a deeper purpose. Just then, the attic door creaked open. Lily, Clara's 15-year-old daughter, stood framed in the doorway, her phone clutched in her hand, her expression a mix of boredom and digital alertness. "Mom, what are you doing up here? It's practically an archaeological dig." Lily's eyes, bright and curious despite her practiced teenage ennui, landed on the old cassette player. "Whoa, a relic. What's that even playing?" Clara slowly turned. "It's your great-grandmother, your Nana Eleanor." She paused, searching for the right words. She recorded her own funeral. Lily's eyebrows shot up. "No way! That's epic! Like really, really dark, but also kind of amazing. Can we listen? Clara looked at the innocent, eager face of her daughter, then back at the small, unassuming cassette player. Perhaps this wasn't just for her. Perhaps this was meant for all of them. A strange, unexpected bridge between generations, woven by a woman who had always lived by her own rules. Yes, Clara said, a strange mix of dread and anticipation stirring within her. Yes, we can listen. Chapter 2, The Unraveling Melody. The crackle and hiss filled the quiet attic, a backdrop to Eleanor's unwavering voice. Lily, initially captivated by the sheer novelty, soon found herself leaning closer, her phone forgotten. Eleanor's words weren't just a morbid monologue, they were a meticulously crafted performance. "To my dear Clara," the voice said, a shift in tone, a note of tender warmth entering the air. "My pragmatic, sensible Clara. You'll be the one trying to make sense of all this, I know. Don't. Just listen. And remember the smell of salt air and blooming lilacs. We always loved those springs in Salem, didn't we?" A soft, melancholic piano melody, barely audible beneath Eleanor's voice, began to play. Clara recognized it. Clair de Lune, her mother's favorite. A shiver ran down her spine. This wasn't random. This was intentional. And to Lily, Eleanor continued, her voice gaining a surprising lightness, as if she were speaking directly to the future. "My bright, curious Lily, you, who I haven't met yet, but I already know. You'll be the one with the clever mind, the one who sees patterns where others see only chaos. Pay attention, my dear. The answers are in the details, always." Lily gasped. She knew about me. How could she know? Her eyes widened, a mixture of awe and dawning wonder. Clara felt a profound sense of disorientation. Eleanor had recorded this 15 years ago. Lily was born 14 years ago. How could she have known? Was it merely a lucky guess, a general statement for a future grandchild, or something more, prescient? As the tape continued, Eleanor's voice painted vivid pictures. She spoke of her childhood, of secrets whispered in the quiet of night, of first loves and inevitable heartbreaks. She mentioned specific people, moments, and places that Clara remembered, and many she didn't. Each person, each memory, was accompanied by a distinct piece of music, a jaunty jazz tune for her late husband Harold, a classical symphony for her brother Arthur, a quiet academic. It was a complex, multi-layered tapestry of a life, woven with sound. "She's picked music for everyone," Lily murmured, her tech-savvy mind already analyzing the structure. "It's like a playlist of her life, but also for us." Clara nodded, lost in the echoing melodies and the ghosts of memory. This wasn't just a funeral plan. It was an autobiography, a confessional, a grand final performance. But why? Why now, when she was still alive? What was the purpose of this elaborate, posthumous message? The answers remained elusive, dancing just out of reach like the dust motes in the sunbeams. The more they listened, the more Clara realized the profound depth of her mother's actions. This wasn't merely about planning a funeral. It was about shaping her legacy, controlling the narrative of her life after she was gone. But beneath the surface of Eleanor's grand pronouncements and whimsical instructions, Clara sensed an undercurrent of something else. A sadness, a secret, a story untold. Chapter 3. The Elmwood Secret. Days bled into a week. The attic, once a place of musty forgottenness, became their sanctuary. Clara and Lily spent hours there, huddled around the old cassette player, deciphering Eleanor's audio will. Lily, with her natural inclination for digital order, started categorizing the segments, trying to pinpoint dates, names, and the specific pieces of music. "Okay," Lily announced one afternoon, tapping on her tablet. "So she mentions the Elmwood Secret 3 times. Once, when she's talking about her grandmother, Amelia. Again, when she's talking about her own youth in Boston. And then, most cryptically, when she's speaking directly to me." Clara frowned. "The Elmwood Secret? I've never heard of it. Our family moved to Salem from Boston when I was very young. Eleanor never spoke much about her life there." "Well, she's talking about it now," Lily said, replaying a specific segment. Eleanor's voice, a touch of melancholy now, filled the air. "The Elmwood Secret. Some things are meant to be buried with the dead. Or so I thought. But some truths, like persistent weeds, find their way to the light. And perhaps, for the sake of future generations, they should. Especially for you, my curious Lily, who will one day piece together what I could not." The music accompanying this segment was haunting. A lone cello playing a somber, unresolved melody. "This is weird," Lily said, her brow furrowed. "It sounds like she wants us to find something she deliberately hid." The idea of a hidden secret, tucked within the layers of this audio tapestry, ignited a new purpose in Clara. It wasn't just about understanding Eleanor's eccentricities. It was about uncovering a piece of their family's history that had been deliberately obscured. They started digging, not just through the cassette, but through old photo albums, dusty diaries, letters tied with fading ribbons, anything that might hint at Elmwood or a secret in Boston. Clara felt a strange urgency, as if Eleanor from her nursing home bed was guiding them, nudging them towards a truth she had been unable to speak aloud. The Elmwood Secret began to consume them. It wasn't merely a puzzle, it was an emotional journey. They found fragments of information, old letters from a distant cousin mentioning trouble in Boston. A faded photograph of a young woman Clara didn't recognize, her face obscured by shadow. One evening, as they were listening to a particularly cryptic segment of the tape, Eleanor's voice, speaking to Lily, became almost a whisper. "The key, my little sleuth, is in the music. It's not just a soundtrack. It's a code, a symphony of hidden truths. And look for the numbers woven into the rhythm of the old house, the numbers in the lullaby I sang to my sister. The Elmwood Secret isn't a place, it's a time, a moment, a choice." Lily gasped. "Numbers? The lullaby. She used to sing a lullaby to me when I was little, but it was just a few lines. I thought it was just a silly song." Suddenly, the cassette wasn't just an audio diary. It was a scavenger hunt, an intricate, emotional puzzle designed by a woman who, even in her 90s, was still orchestrating her family's destiny. Chapter 4. The Coded Lullaby. The Lullaby. Clara remembered it vaguely, a gentle, nonsensical tune Eleanor used to hum. Lily, however, remembered it more clearly. She had even hummed it herself to soothe herself as a child. It was something like, "Sleep, my darling, sleep so deep. For the moon counts stars that creep. 5 little secrets, 10 little toes, where the river gently flows. 3 wishes whispered, silent and true. 9 dreams waiting just for you." Lily hummed the simple melody, her brow furrowed in concentration. Clara grabbed a pen and paper. 5, 10, 3, 9, she muttered, writing down the numbers. What could they mean? They spent hours cross-referencing these numbers with other snippets from the tape, with dates, with addresses. Nothing seemed to fit. The frustration mounted. The more they listened, the more complex the puzzle became. Eleanor had truly thought of everything. Maybe it's not literal numbers, Lily suggested after several failed attempts. Maybe it's about the sequence, the order, or maybe it's a musical code. Lily, with her knack for technology, took a different approach. She used an audio editing software she downloaded, trying to isolate individual notes from the music accompanying the Elmwood Secret segments. She enhanced the quiet parts, listened for subtle shifts in pitch, for anything that might suggest a pattern. Suddenly, she let out a cry of triumph. "Mom, listen to this." She played a short, almost subliminal sequence from the cello piece. Do you hear it? Underneath the main melody? It's not notes. It's a rhythm, a distinct tapping, like Morse code almost. Clara leaned in, straining her ears. And there it was, a faint, almost imperceptible series of taps, barely audible above the cello. Dot, dot, dash, dot, dot. It was a slow, deliberate rhythm, carefully embedded within the music. They worked late into the night, Lily painstakingly isolating each tap, Clara trying to decipher the rhythm. It wasn't Morse code, they quickly realized, but it was a sequence, a repeating pattern. And then Lily had another idea. What if it's not letters? What if it's numbers again, but encoded in a different way? Like, how many taps in each sequence were the pauses between them? They tried this. The sequence of taps and pauses, when translated into numerical values based on duration, revealed a series of numbers that mirrored the lullaby numbers, but in a different order. 3, 9, 5, 10. The lullaby was a cipher key, Clara exclaimed, a thrill of excitement running through her. The order was important. The numbers, 3, 9, 5, 10, led them to an old Boston City directory from the 1940s, which Eleanor had kept among her papers. Clara remembered seeing it, but had dismissed it as irrelevant. Now, with the numbers as their guide, they looked for addresses corresponding to these digits, or perhaps street numbers. And then it clicked. On page 395 in the Boston directory, they found a small, almost unnoticed advertisement for Elmwood Asylum, a sanctuary for troubled minds. Its address, 10 Willow Creek Lane, Boston. Clara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool attic air. An asylum. Eleanor had never, ever spoken of an asylum in connection with their family. A new, far darker layer was beginning to peel away from the mystery of the Elmwood Secret. Chapter 5. The Photo in the Hidden Compartment. Armed with the address of Elmwood Asylum, Clara and Lily returned to the cassette. Eleanor's voice, speaking about the Elmwood Secret, now held a new, chilling significance. The cello music, once merely melancholic, now seemed to sing of profound sorrow. My dear sister, Evelyn. Eleanor's voice trembled slightly in one segment, a raw vulnerability that Clara had never heard before. You were the one who saw the world differently, too brightly perhaps, for this dull world. They said it was for your own good, but I knew they were taking away the light. A gasp escaped Clara's lips. Evelyn. Her mother had a sister named Evelyn? Clara had grown up an only child, or so she thought. Eleanor had never mentioned a sibling, not once. It was as if Evelyn had been erased from their family's history. A deep sense of betrayal mingled with a wave of profound sadness. How could her mother have kept such a monumental secret for so long? Lily, seeing her mother's distress, paused the tape. "Mom, are you okay? Who's Evelyn?" Clara shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know. My mother never spoke of a sister. Never." The silence in the attic was heavy, laden with unspoken sorrow and a lifetime of hidden pain. Eleanor's voice, when they resumed the tape, was clearer, stronger now, as if reaching out from across the decades. "They said she disappeared. They said she ran away. But I knew the truth was much harder to bear. The Elmwood Secret wasn't about a place, it was about a person, a life, a story that was never told." The music then swelled, a powerful, almost triumphant orchestral piece, filled with a sense of defiance and sorrow. "And now for Lily," Eleanor continued, her voice softening, a profound tenderness now. "My little detective, you will find what I couldn't. The truth, the story of Evelyn. Look in the place where I kept my truest memories. The hidden compartment in the old cherry wood desk. The one with the carving of a single oak leaf." Clara immediately knew the desk. It sat in the study downstairs, a beautiful antique piece that had belonged to Eleanor's grandmother. Clara had always admired the intricate oak leaf carving on its side, but she'd never suspected it held a secret. They rushed downstairs, their hearts pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. The desk was old, solid, its wood gleaming from years of polish. Clara ran her fingers over the oak leaf carving. It felt smooth, warm. She pressed it, pushed it, but nothing happened. "Maybe it's not a push," Lily suggested, her keen eyes scanning the desk. "Look at the grain. See how it looks slightly different right here?" She pointed to a subtle line in the wood, almost invisible to the naked eye, just above the leaf. "What if it's a slide?" Clara slid her finger along the line. With a soft click, a narrow, almost imperceptible drawer slid out from the side of the desk. It was so perfectly integrated into the design that it was virtually undetectable. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single, fragile photograph. It was a sepia-toned picture of two young girls, standing side by side, their arms linked. One was Eleanor, recognizable by her mischievous eyes. The other girl, slightly taller, with a radiant smile and eyes that seemed to sparkle with an inner light, was Evelyn. Her face was vibrant, full of life, not shadowed by the troubled mind suggested by the asylum. Beneath the photograph, a yellowed newspaper clipping lay folded. Clara unfolded it with trembling hands. The headline, dated 1948, screamed, "Mystery deepens in Elmwood Asylum disappearance. Young patient vanishes without a trace." The article went on to describe the disappearance of Evelyn Vance, aged 18, from the Elmwood Asylum. She had been admitted for nervous exhaustion after a period of intense artistic expression. The authorities had concluded she had simply run away, a common occurrence at the time. Clara's vision blurred with tears. Evelyn, her mother's sister, not a disappearance, but a tragedy. A life taken, not by death, but by a system that couldn't understand her brilliance, her sensitivity. And Eleanor had carried this secret, this immense grief, for over 70 years. The realization hit Clara with the force of a tidal wave. The entire cassette, the elaborate funeral plan, the coded messages. It wasn't just about her own passing. It was about Evelyn. It was Eleanor's way of finally, after all these years, laying her beloved sister to rest. And in doing so, freeing herself from the silent burden she had carried. Chapter 6. A Sister's Requiem. The silence in the study was profound, broken only by the soft rustle of the old newspaper clipping in Clara's hands. Lily, her face pale, stared at the photograph of Evelyn. Her young eyes filled with a dawning understanding. The Elmwood Secret, once a tantalizing mystery, was now a heartbreaking truth. Clara returned to the attic, clutching the photograph and the newspaper clipping. She pressed play on the cassette player, needing to hear Eleanor's voice again, but this time with the full context of Evelyn's story. Eleanor's voice, once so cryptic, now resonated with raw emotion. She spoke of Evelyn's vibrant spirit, her artistic talent, her boundless imagination. She described the fear and helplessness she felt as a young girl, watching her sister, full of life, being taken away to the asylum, labeled as troubled. They said it was for her own good. Eleanor whispered on the tape, her voice thick with unshed tears. But she wasn't troubled. She was just too much for a world that preferred silence to song. And then she was gone, vanished. They said she ran away, but I never believed it. Not really. I always felt she just faded, like a beautiful, delicate flower plucked before its time. The cello music, the mournful strains they had heard before, now seemed to weep with Eleanor. Clara finally understood the profound grief embedded in every note, every carefully chosen melody. The cassette wasn't just a funeral plan. It was a requiem for a life lost, a sister mourned in secret for decades. Eleanor continued, her voice gaining strength, a quiet resolution. I carried that secret, that pain, all my life. It was too heavy to speak aloud, too painful to share. But now I can tell her story. Through you, through this recording. Because a life unremembered is a life truly lost. Then a surprising shift. Eleanor's voice brightened, a spark of her old, indomitable spirit returning. And Lily, my dearest great-granddaughter, who has the gift of seeing what others miss. You are Evelyn's spirit. You are the one who understands the music, the codes, the hidden messages. You are the one who will carry her light forward. Lily, listening intently, reached out and gently took the photograph of Evelyn from Clara's hand. She traced the radiant smile, a silent promise in her eyes. She's beautiful, Nana. Really beautiful. The cassette played on, now not just a recording, but a conversation. Eleanor spoke of her own life, the choices she made, the path she took. She spoke of her love for Harold, for Clara, for the family she had built. But always, woven through it all, was the thread of Evelyn, the unspoken sorrow, the unshared burden. The discovery of Evelyn's story brought a catharsis that Clara hadn't realized she so desperately needed. Her own grief for Thomas, her sense of being lost and adrift, suddenly seemed less overwhelming. Eleanor, even from her memory care unit, was showing her the way. Life was complex, filled with unspoken pains and hidden stories. But it was also filled with resilience, with love, and with the enduring power of family connection. Chapter 7. The Unveiling of Love. The Elmwood Manor, once a house of silence, now hummed with a new kind of life. The attic, no longer a place of dusty secrets, became a space of shared discovery and profound connection. Clara and Lily, united by Eleanor's audio odyssey, spent the next few days listening to the entire tape again, this time with new ears, new understanding. Every seemingly whimsical instruction, every seemingly random musical choice, now held a deeper meaning. The instructions for Eleanor's celebration of life were not just about how she wanted to be remembered. They were subtle nods to Evelyn, to their shared childhood, to the things that brought both joy and sorrow. The jazz tunes, once thought to be for Harold, now evoked the lively Boston of their youth before the shadows fell. The classical pieces, for Arthur, hinted at the solace they found in art and knowledge. Eleanor's voice, at times whimsical, at times grave, became a living presence in the house. She spoke of forgiveness, of learning to let go, of finding beauty even in the deepest sorrow. She offered advice for Clara's future, for Lily's burgeoning talents, even for the grandnephews and nieces she'd never met. Each message was a gift, a carefully wrapped piece of wisdom delivered from beyond the perceived boundary of life and death. And for my pragmatic Clara, Eleanor's voice said, now filled with a quiet strength that Clara found both comforting and challenging. Don't let grief consume you. Life asks us to keep moving, even when our feet feel heavy. Find your own rhythm, my dear. Find your own song. And remember, love doesn't end with a farewell. It simply changes its melody. Clara felt a profound sense of release. She had been so consumed by Thomas's death, by the abrupt silence he left behind, that she had forgotten how to listen for the echoes of love that still resonated. Eleanor, through her remarkable tape, was teaching her to listen again, to find comfort in the memories, to acknowledge the pain, but not to let it define her. Lily, meanwhile, was fascinated by the intricate layers of the recording. She marveled at Eleanor's foresight, her ingenious use of sound and subtle clues. She was a genius, Mom, Lily declared, a new respect in her voice. She didn't just record a tape. She orchestrated a masterpiece. One afternoon, as they sat in the living room, surrounded by the familiar comfort of the old house, Clara called the nursing home. She spoke to Eleanor, who, in her gentle dementia, sometimes floated between lucidity and distant memories. Nana, Clara said softly, we found the tape, the one with Evelyn. A flicker, a momentary spark of recognition passed through Eleanor's eyes. A faint smile touched her lips. Ah, Evelyn, she murmured, a gentle sigh. She loved the spring, didn't she? All the lilacs. Clara smiled through her tears. Eleanor might not fully grasp the intricate web she had spun, but the core of it, the love for her sister, remained. Chapter 8, The Song of Life. The day of Eleanor's celebration of life arrived a few weeks later. Eleanor was still alive, her mind drifting gently, but her body weakening. The family, now aware of the cassette's profound significance, gathered in the sun-drenched garden of Elmwood Manor, surrounded by the very lilacs Eleanor had mentioned. There was no somber atmosphere, no heavy eulogies. Instead, they played the cassette. Not just the funeral instructions, but the segments dedicated to each family member, the stories, the wisdom, and the deeply personal pieces of music. When Eleanor's voice spoke of Evelyn and the mournful cello filled the garden, a collective hush fell over the family. Clara, for the first time, openly shared the photograph of Evelyn and the newspaper clipping. The story of Evelyn, the forgotten sister, was finally told, not as a tragedy to be hidden, but as a part of their family's rich, complex history. Tears flowed freely, but they were tears of understanding, of shared grief, and of profound empathy. Lily, standing beside Clara, played the segment Eleanor had dedicated to her. The music, a playful yet wise melody, seemed to dance in the air. Eleanor's voice, speaking of her little detective, her bright, curious Lily, brought a quiet smile to Lily's face. She felt an unbreakable bond with her great-grandmother, a connection that transcended time and space. As the tape concluded, a final, triumphant orchestral piece swelled, filling the garden with a sense of hope and enduring love. Eleanor's final words, recorded all those years ago, echoed in their hearts. So, my dear family, remember this: life is a symphony, full of joy, sorrow, discord, and harmony. Don't be afraid of the quiet parts. Don't be afraid of the loud ones. Just listen. Listen to the echoes of the past, the whispers of the present, and the promises of the future. And know that love, true love, never truly fades. It simply changes its melody, echoing through the generations forever. Clara looked at her daughter, Lily, who stood with her eyes closed, listening to the final notes. She saw the same light in Lily's eyes that shone in Evelyn's old photograph. She knew that the Elmwood Secret, once a burden, had become a legacy, a story of resilience, of love, of the extraordinary power of an old cassette tape to bridge generations, heal old wounds, and remind them all that even in endings, there are always new beginnings. The sun set over Elmwood Manor, casting long, peaceful shadows. The echoes of Eleanor's voice and the music she had chosen lingered in the air, a beautiful, enduring song of life.